So now we're on to 3.3, and this is finding common factors in a polynomial. Okay, so remember what a factor is. It's something that can be divided by two numbers. So like 2 and 8, they both can be divided by 2, right? This equals 1, this equals 4. So that makes this 2 the common factor. Or if you have like 9 and 12, they're both divisible by 3. So here's the common factor, okay, which would be 3. Okay, now a polynomial, remember what a polynomial is. Okay, you learned this in grade 9. A polynomial is a number, okay, where you have numbers and you have variables. Okay, so we have variables here. Remember that variables are simply just numbers that haven't been chosen yet. So this x could be any number until we decide, but we don't know what it is, so we're just going to leave it as x. Same with y and z. Okay, so before we jump into things, this is some stuff that you just really simply need to understand in order to be successful in 3.3 and math really moving forward. So what a power means. So everybody knows what a power means. If you have like 2 to the power of 6, this is your exponent, okay? And what does a power mean? If I have 2 to the power of 3, that means I got to take 2 and multiply it by itself 3 times. If I have 4 to the power of 8, that means I got to take 4 and multiply it 8 times by itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I have y squared, well, that means I got to take whatever y is and multiply twice, right? If I have to take r cubed, well, that's r times r times r. Okay, so hopefully we're seeing the pattern here. Now, remember that multiplication is commutative, okay? So what does that mean? That means 4 times 6, okay? And I don't really use that multiplication symbol anymore. We use a dot. 4 times 6 equals 6 times 4. Or 3 times 8 is the same thing as 8 times 3, okay? Or if you have m times n, well, that's the same thing as n times m. Okay, they all equal the same thing. We can just move around these values. So like y squared times z times x, that's the same thing as y squared x times z, which is the same thing as z times y squared times x. So you can just see I'm simply moving these guys around, okay? And then some definitions that are really important to know. Okay, so you need to know what coefficients are, terms, variables, exponents, and constants. So first off, what is a coefficient? The coefficient are just the numbers listed next to the variables. So you have your number here, number here, number here, and then this also counts as a coefficient, but this one's special. It's called the constant, okay? So our coefficients in this case, let's actually change this not to a c, but let's make it plus 8, okay? Sorry. So our coefficients here would be -3, 6, 4, and 8, okay? What are the terms? So terms are numbers that are separated between subtraction and negative symbols or addition symbols, okay? So let's put or addition. So in this case, this is one whole term, this is another whole term, this is another whole term, and this is another whole term. They're separated by addition or subtraction symbols. In this case, they're all addition, but it also includes subtraction. So here, what are our terms? So term 1 equals -3x squared yz cubed. So that was that guy. Our second term, so term 2, would be 6xy squared. Okay, our third term would be 4xz to the power of 5, and then our last term would be 8. Okay, so hopefully you can see what terms are from there. Variables are just the letters, okay, so x, y, and z. Okay, so again, they're not just magical letters, they are in fact placeholders acting as numbers. So we don't know what these numbers are yet, but we will at some point. Maybe we won't, but we just have to know that they are placeholders for numbers. So that's like x, y, and z. The exponents here, exponents are the powers of the variables. Okay, so in this case, it would be 2 here, this 3, this 2, this 5. And remember, if there isn't an exponent, you can assume it's 1. So like here, x squared times y times z cubed, I'm going to highlight all of the exponents. So the exponents in this case would be 2, 3, and then 1 when it's not there. So you can assume there's a 1 there. Okay? And constants, that's when they're the number with no variable next to it. So where's our constant up here? Our constant is 8. Okay, so there's our constant. So in the above, it is 8. Okay, and of course that number changes depending on what you're looking at. Okay, so this is all stuff that you have learned already, okay? And you might not remember it, so if you don't, you definitely want to review this a few times because it is crucial in what we're going to go ahead and do. So when you're factoring a polynomial, what you're doing is you're asking, what does each term have in common? Okay, so you have to find what each term has in common. So here, we have 2x squared minus 6x to the power 4 plus 4x cubed. What does each term have in common? Each term has, well, their numbers are all divisible by 2. So 2, they each have an x. Okay, and what do they have in those x's? Well, the smallest amount of x that each one has is 2, so they all have at least x squared in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out. AKA, what I mean is I'm going to factor it out. And recognize this thing that we just found is the greatest common factor between terms. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take 2x squared out, and now I'm going to divide each term by 2x squared. So here will be 2x squared divided 2x squared. That cancels out, and that just equals 1. So this, now that I've taken 2x squared out, I just have 1. I'm going to divide 2x squared by our second term. So negative 6x to the power 4 divided 2x squared. 6 dividing 2 gives me 3, and remember that negative value is going to follow along. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. X to the power 4 divided x to the power of 2. Well, here, remember, when you divide exponent or variables, you subtract their exponents. So this will be 4 minus 2, so that gives you x squared. Another way to think about it is you've taken 2 of those x's away and you're left with 2 x's. So now we have subtract 3x squared. Okay, that's found here. And then here, 4x cubed, and I'm going to divide it by our 2x squared. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. X cubed divided by x, well, that gets rid of all of these and you're left with a single x. So this will be plus 2x. And there is my factored out form, okay, of 2x squared minus 6x to the power of 4 plus 4x cubed. Okay, let's move down here. Now here, what do all these things have in common? Let's find out their greatest common factor. Well, if we look at all the values, 9 and 12 and 18, they're all divisible by 3. So these things I will have 3 I'm going to take out of. Now, our first two terms have an x, but our last does not. So I'm not able to take out an x because not every single one has an x. How about z? This one has a z and our third term has a z, but our second term does not. So I can't even take out a z. So I can't do anything with the variables. So the greatest common factor is simply 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a 3. And again, you divide your greatest common factor when you're factoring it out. So negative 9xz to the cube dividing 3. Well, here, negative 9 divided 3 gives me negative 1. Or sorry, negative 3. And I'm not doing anything to my x and my z cubed, so they just follow along. So this will be, this will be negative 3xz to the power of 3. I'm going to then divide out 3 from 12x cubed. 12 divided by 3 gives me 4, and my x cubed is being left alone. So this will be plus 4x cubed. Negative 18 negative 18z squared divided 3. Negative 18 divided by 3 gives me negative 6z squared. So that will go up here. And there is my solution. Okay, there is 3, or this is the factored form of our value. Okay. Now this one's definitely tougher. Okay. We have to determine what all these numbers are divisible by. Okay, and then their greatest common factor. So let's just figure out what is their greatest common factor. So 24, 12, and 36. Those are all divisible, I know, by 6. So let's divide it by 6. Now, look at their variables. This one has an x squared, this one has an x, and this one has an x squared. Each one at least has an x, so I'm going to take out x. Focus on your y's. This is y to the power of 4, y to the power of 1, y squared. They all have at least y here. And then z squared, z and z, they all have at least a minimum of 1z. So I'm going to take this out. Okay, so this will be 6xyz, multiplying. Now, let's do this step by step. So 24 dividing 6. So I remember I'm taking my value here, 24x squared, y to the power of 4, z squared. And I'm dividing by 6xyz. 24 dividing by 6. That gives me 4. X squared dividing x. Well, that cancels one x out. So I'm just left with x. Y to the power of 4 dividing x. That cancels one of these out and cancels the bottom out. So I'm left with y cubed. Z squared dividing z. Well, that cancels that out and that gives me z. So here will be 4xy cubed z. Okay, and now I gotta take out 6xyz in this term. So here I'll do that over here. 12xyz dividing 6xyz. Focus on your numbers first. 12 dividing 6, that gives me 2. Okay, x dividing x, that cancels out and gives you 1. Okay, so I'm not going to write anything. Y dividing y, that cancels out, and z dividing z. So I'm actually just left with 2 here. So this will be plus 2. And then finally, I'm doing my third term, 36x squared y squared z, dividing 6xy to the z. So here, 36 dividing 6, that gives me 6. X squared dividing x, that cancels out one of those x's and leaves you with x. Y squared divided by y, that cancels out a y. So you're left with y on top, and then z divided by z cancels out. So you get plus 6xy. Now, sometimes you might not get it right off the dot. Recognize that I still have the ability to take out 2 here. Okay, so I messed up and didn't get my greatest common factor totally. I could make even a bigger number, but that's okay. You don't have to restart. You can just notice, hey, I can take out 2 from all of these numbers. So what I'm going to do is my first thing I took out is still there. And then I'm going to take out a 2. So 4 dividing 2 gives me 2. and then my values. I didn't take out any other variables. 2 dividing 2 dividing 2 gives you 1, so this would be plus 1. 6 dividing 2 gives me 3, so plus 3xy. And now I can simplify one more time here and recognize, remember, multiplication is commutative, so we can represent this in any order multiplying each other. So I'm going to do 2 times 6, which gives me 12xyz. And then that's going to multiply to xy cubed z plus 1 plus 3xy. And there is my final factored solution. So this thing equals 12xyz multiplying to xy cubed z plus 1 minus 3xy. And there's your final factored out solution. Okay, so I think I'm going to split this video into 2 different sections. So I'll leave you at that with that. You definitely want to practice that a lot, okay? Because this is something that's very, very, very crucial moving forward. So if you have any questions with this part 1, please